Welcome to today's broadcast. We will be reading from the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 7. I'll read the first three verses. 2 Samuel 7, 1, 2, and 3. After the king was settled in his palace, and the Lord had given him rest from all his enemies around him, he said to Nathan the prophet, "Here I am, living in a house of cedar, while the ark of God remains in a tent." Nathan replied to the king, "Whatever you have in mind, go ahead and do it, for the Lord is with you." Now we are reading about King David here. The Bible says after he had settled down. That means he had been fighting for a long time, but now he settled down and he had rest from his enemies. He was not under any attack. He was assured that he's going to have, peaceful time, peaceful reign after all the fighting that he had been doing. And so during that time, we see it was the time of the prophet Nathan. David had a concern. When he settled in the palace, he had a concern, a great concern, which we should all have in our lives. Look at what he says. He tells the prophet Nathan, "Here I am, living in a house of cedar, while the ark of God remains in a tent." Now, just so that we may understand, cedar was probably the most expensive type of wood. The cedar tree was a strong, powerful, and durable tree, and so its timber was very highly priced. We read about the cedar tree many times in the Bible. I believe it is mentioned about 72 times in the Bible. That's how important it is, the cedar tree. You commonly find it being referred to as the cedars of Lebanon, or something like that, or cedars of Babylon. So it was a pricey wood. So the most expensive items would be made of cedar. The most expensive houses and items in the house, furnishing in the house, would be made of cedar because it was pricey, it was expensive. And that's why you see David saying, I'm living in a house, in a palace made of cedar, yet the ark of God is in a tent. Now the ark of God, on the other hand, this is what signified the presence of God. The ark of God, which we also call the ark of the covenant, we see it being moved from time to time. You see, after when the children of Israel were in the wilderness, when they were traveling, the ark of the covenant will go ahead of them, or will go with them. And we read the other time that at one time the ark of the covenant had been taken away by other people, and we saw what happened when they took it away until they had to return it. Now, the Ark of the Covenant is the one that contained the two tablets of the Ten Commandments. It signified the presence of God. And as we can see, when the house of God, the temple, was built in Jerusalem later on, which was done by Solomon, the son of David, because as we see here, God spoke to Nathan the prophet and told him, "You will not build me a temple. I have blessed you. You will not build me a house. I have blessed you. I will bless your house. I will bless your kingdom. It will reign forever. And I will raise someone in your house," that happened to be Solomon, who came after David, "that will build me a house." And that was a temple in Jerusalem, which was built by King Solomon. That's where God instructed how the temple will be built. And the temple had three courts. It had the outer court, it had the inner court, and then it had the Holy of Holies. And in the Holy of Holies, which was the innermost part, where only the high priest will go, that is where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. But that was after this fact. Well, today we are just looking at the fact that David had a concern that he was living in an expensive house. He was living lavishly. He was living a good life. Yet the house, or yet the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of God, was in a tent. What a state of affairs it was. And I want to tell you that when I look at the church and the world today, that is exactly what I see. Most of us who profess to be Christians, we are living at large. We are living expensive lives. We are living in expensive houses. We are driving expensive cars. We are eating and expensive food and wasting a lot of it, but throwing it in the trash. While those in the house of the Lord, are dying of hunger, of starvation, of sickness and disease and illness. Why? While we ourselves, who confess and profess to be Christians, are living expensive lives. David could not think about it, could not imagine that he was living in such a house, an expensive house, a palace, while the Ark of God was in a tent. I want to challenge all of us, and I want to challenge you, and I want to challenge myself. The house of the Lord should be a house of refuge, should be a house where people, the sick, come to seek refuge, to be healed, where the hungry come and they find something to eat, where the sick can come and they have some consolation and get some healing, where people with various needs come and their needs are met. But look at the house of God today. That is mainly, there are places where that is happening, and this is just a blanket, and this is just a blanket, a general command. What I'm saying is, we ought to make things in the right way and in the right order, which is what David wanted to do. He wanted to build a house of God where the Ark of the Covenant would be, which will be better or equal to what he had for himself. I want to challenge you today. What kind of life are you living? And what kind of life are others living in the house of God? And that's why, God is concerned about the poor. God is concerned about the orphans, about the widows. God is concerned because, and that's why he says, whoever gives to the poor, he lends a hand to God. He gives to God. He is lending a hand to God who gives to the poor. God is concerned about them. And look, these are the majority of people who are in the house of God. You go into any church, you go into any place of worship, these are the majority of people who are struggling in life, people who are looking for ways to survive in life. And yet some of us are living lavishly and wasting a lot of things in our lives while others are dying. And yet they are our brothers, they are our sisters. David could not think about that. There are look at many churches, even today, you would even be ashamed to visit such a church. We have to, in many occasions, we have to stoop too low to beg others, who are in leadership and politicians, so that they can come and bail us out, so that we can, uplift, or so that we can, build a decent house for the house of God. And there's no problem with that. You know, if we had Christians who had the heart of David and would be concerned that they are living better than those in the house of the Lord, then things will be far much better. David wanted to do it. He wanted to build a house for God. He wanted to make sure that that the house of God is at least in a decent condition or better than what he had for himself. The challenge is up to you, is on you, is on me. We got a challenge. Look at the house of the Lord. What can you do to improve the condition of the house of the Lord? What can you do? What can I do to improve the condition? And improving the condition of the house of the Lord involves improving the condition of the people who are there. Involves improving the conditions of those who are serving there. Involves improving the conditions of the structure. Involves the condition of every aspect of the house of God, because that is the house of God. Jesus himself was concerned. We read the other day that Jesus had gone into the temple and he met people doing business there. He was concerned because the house of God was not meant for that. The house of God is meant to be a house of worship, a house of praising, a house of prayer, a house where you come and have fellowship with God. But that cannot happen if this is a kind of a condition that is going to be in. The challenge is on you, the challenge is on me. Compare the life that you are living in your house, in your home, and the life that is in the house of God. What can you do? How can you improve it? Thank you for joining me. God bless you. Until tomorrow.